The Jason Strain, Chapter 18. They ran for what felt like ages, heat pounding down and making it hard to breathe as they chopped and tore their way through the jungle. Alex's heart was beating so hard that she couldn't tell if she heard people following them or not. When they finally broke out of the jungle and onto the beach, they found themselves in a makeshift camp of camouflage tents and stacked crates. There were only 3 soldiers left in their group, including the one with the deep voice, who ordered Alex, Butch, and Val through the camp and brought them before a neat little whippet of a man with a gray mustache, who had to be a senior officer. "I'm Colonel Thomas Bing," the man told them. "I am here to see you off this island and get you all safely back into custody." "Lovely," Val said under her breath. The guy glared at her and then turned his gaze on to the man with the deep voice. "Sergeant Blakely," Colonel Bing said. "What the hell is going on out there?" "Sir," Blakely said, removing the gas mask and revealing a tan and handsome face, "I don't know what to tell you. My own men attacked us. They became infected with whatever the infected contestants seem to have. I've never seen anything like it, sir." "Right," Colonel Bing replied, squinting into the sun. "I want you to contain the uninfected contestants until the chopper returns. Some of our boys took sick, so we evac'd them back to the ship. As soon as the chopper returns, I want these people off the island, understood?" "Yes, sir," Sergeant Blakely replied. He prodded the 3 of them into a low tent. Inside the tent was a young, sweaty grunt and another contestant, the mild-looking businessman type. He was sitting Indian style, shirtless, with his hands cuffed behind his back. "Anderson, I want you to cuff all 4 of them together and keep an eye on them," Sergeant Blakely told the grunt. "They'll be hopping the next bird out of this nightmare." "Lucky bastards," the grunt replied, uncoiling a long loop of steel cable like a bicycle lock. "Keep up that attitude and you're going to find yourself on corpse detail, Anderson." "Yes, sir," Anderson said. "Sorry, sir." Anderson bound the 4 of them back to back in a circle around the central tent pole, with the cable running between their elbows, over one arm and under the other. Alex and Butch were back to back. Val was on Alex's right and Travis on her left. "Guess you guys know each other," Anderson said, clicking home the lock. "I'm afraid I haven't had the pleasure," the mild-faced man said. "Travis Henry." "Travis Henry?" Butch's eyes went wide. "Holy shit!" Alex frowned. "What?" "The butcher is no doubt referring to my infamous history," Travis said. "You are also quite famous, aren't you, Mr. Mahan?" "Infamous," Alex repeated. "Fucker killed 78 people," Val said. 20 of them were kids. 79, actually, Travis said. "No shit," Anderson said, wiping sweat from his brow with his olive drab t-shirt. "Damn, man." "Kids?" Alex was appalled. "Jesus." "Hey, we're all killers here," Travis said. "Isn't that right, Private Anderson?" "Fuck you," Anderson said. "It don't count when it's the enemy. Everybody knows that." "Interesting distinction," Travis said. "I will have to keep that in mind for future reference." "Butch," Alex said. "Yeah," Butch replied. The staccato sound of panicked gunfire outside the tent blew away any thought of whatever Alex was about to ask right out of her mind. Anderson went wide-eyed and ran to the flap of the tent. To their horror and amazement, a spray of bullets drove the young grunt backward in a spastic jig, and he collapsed inches away from Alex's boots. "Fuck!" Alex said, as she watched Anderson's body twitch and shudder, then grow still. "Look," Val said, "he's really dead." There were more gunshots and a whole orchestra of terrifying sounds, tearing, hissing, and growling, along with panicked shouting and agonized screams. "What do you mean?" Butch asked, wrenching his hands back and forth pointlessly in the cuffs. "I mean, he isn't infected," Val said. "I was right. The infected blood has to get into your bloodstream before you die, in order to pass on the virus." "Shit," Butch said. "I think you're right." "We need to get free," Alex said, pulling at her cuffs till her wrist ached. "We need those keys." Suddenly the tent flap opened and an infected soldier lurched in. He had a massive sucking chest wound that bubbled and hissed as he turned his bloody eyes on the 4 of them. A blast of hot panic shot through Alex. and she pulled with all her strength, snapping the tent pole and dragging the other 3 away from the snarling soldier. The camouflage canvas collapsed down on top of them, trapping them under its weight, along with the infected soldier. In a mad moment of painful chaos, the 4 of them struggled and pulled and twisted, yanking each other every which way, smothered beneath the thick canvas. They could feel the infected soldier flailing nearby, but had no idea how close he really was. "This way," Butch said, dragging everyone to their feet and pushing his way toward the edge of the tent. "Come on!" Alex struggled to follow, stumbling backward behind him, trying to keep upright. All she could see were dark shapes and an occasional flash of terrified eyes. Val was cursing a mile a minute on her right. Travis was silently pushing forward on the other side. There was a sudden, solid thunk, and Butch staggered back into Alex's shoulders, slumping down and pulling them all to the ground. "Fuck!" Val said, pushing at the canvas and finally lifting up an edge to reveal the tree Butch had run into. He wasn't out cold, but he was slouched and rubber-legged, moaning softly. "Butch," Alex said over her shoulder. "Butch, are you okay?" "He's down for the count," Val said. It was like being chained to a side of beef. Butch pushed past 200 pounds and was by far the heaviest of them all. Alex could feel the canvas shaking as the infected soldier got closer and closer. Without thinking twice, she leaned forward hard, raising Butch's dead weight up off his feet until he lay across her back. "Come on," she said, legs straining fiercely under his bulk. They pushed their way out from under the canvas and into hell. All around them, soldiers were battling the infected brothers of theirs. They seemed to have caught on to the decapitation thing, though, but it was far too late to save them. More and more soldiers were dragged down and torn to shreds, only to rise again in the infected frenzy. "Fuck," Butch said. "What the hell happened?" Alex let him down slowly to his feet, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. She felt like she had done way too many hack squats and felt dizzy and sick with adrenaline and fear. "You knocked yourself out, genius," Val said. "That's a first," Butch said, rubbing the swelling knot on his forehead. He twisted his head back toward Alex. "Did you carry me?" "Look," Alex said, "there's Anderson." The infected soldier under the collapsed tent was dragging the canvas away from them, toward the water, pulling with all the comical determination of a dog under a blanket. In the process, he had uncovered Anderson's corpse. "We need those keys," Val said. "Right," Alex said, taking the lead as they awkwardly made their way over to the fallen grunt. "Ready?" Butch asked. 1, 2... The 4 of them squatted down together over the corpse. Butch over the legs, Alex over the head, and Travis and Val on either side with their hands at waist level. Travis and Val each strained to reach one of the pockets, feeling blindly behind their backs. "Hurry it up, kids," Butch said. "There's hardly any normal soldiers left out here." He was right. The soldiers were losing, becoming infected one after the other. It was only a matter of time before the 4 of them were noticed and attacked. Suddenly, without warning, Val was free. She had found the keys, unlocked her own handcuffs, and bolted away. "Get back here!" Butch yelled. "Don't leave us!" An infected soldier heard the shout and came rushing toward them. "Fuck!" Butch said, as the infected soldier made a grab for Travis. Travis kicked and struggled as Butch and Alex tore him free from the soldier's grip. Together, the 3 of them took off after Val. "Val, you fucking bitch!" Butch called. Another infected soldier made a mad lunge at Val, and she staggered back. Butch, Alex, and Travis were right behind Val and slammed into her, knocking her off her feet and kicking the infected soldier away. "Keys, bitch!" Butch said. "Fuck you," Val spat, squirming away and turning down a narrow alley between 2 tents. Butch led as they struggled to catch Val, turning down the path between the tents behind her. "I hate to be a pest at a time like this," Travis said quietly. "What?" Butch asked, kicking out at Val and missing. "I am afraid that I've been bitten," Travis replied. "Here, right here on my leg." "Oh shit," Alex said. "Val," Butch said, "just give us the keys." Val stopped and looked back at them, conflict etched in her face. "Don't let us die like this," Butch said. "Come on, Val," Alex said. "We need each other. You can't make it alone." "Valkyrie," Travis said, "you really should give them the keys now." Travis doubled over suddenly, vomiting violently, and Butch and Alex tried to scoot as far away from him as the cable would allow. "Now, Val," Butch said. Travis was still making low retching noises, his whole body shuddering uncontrollably. "Jesus, Val." "Yes, right now would probably be the opportune time to give them the keys, Valkyrie. Right now." All around them, the infected soldiers began to turn toward the sounds of the argument. A low growl began in Travis's throat, and the twitching suddenly stopped. "Fuck," Alex said. She and Butch turned until they were side by side, pulling the steel cable tight and keeping Travis behind them. Travis was wrenching his head from side to side, straining his neck to bite them. Val had almost reached the other end of the alley between the tents when a horde of infected soldiers appeared at the far end, blocking her path. "Give us the fucking keys, Val," Butch said as Val backed away from the approaching infected soldiers. Val looked from the infected soldiers to Butch and back again, eyes narrow. Then she rushed over to them and unlocked Alex with shaking hands. Alex rubbed her lacerated wrist while Butch fought to keep Travis facing away from him. Butch swung Travis hard to the left, smashing him into a tent pole, and then bent forward, flipping Travis up over his head. Travis landed in front of him, face down in the sand, facing away from Butch with his legs kicking in the air. "Ready?" Val asked. "Do it," Butch said. Val unlocked the cable in Butch's cuffs, who then twisted the cable around Travis's neck, swiftly garroting him. Val furiously kicked Travis's barely attached head until it snapped free and rolled away. The infected soldiers were on them. They fought and kicked and struggled to keep them back. Val grabbed a machete from one of the fallen soldiers and started hacking. Alex was able to grab a rifle, but the trigger seemed stuck. She then raised the firearm, using the butt as a club to beat back the infected soldiers. Butch was using the steel cable to wrench off their heads, but they kept coming, pouring in from both ends of the alley now. "This way," Val said, lifting the huge end of the tent to the right. "Hurry!" Butch held up the edge of the tent for Alex. She knocked back another soldier with the butt of the rifle and then dived under the raised canvas. Butch followed. The tent's interior was dim and was stacked with wooden crates. The canvas bulged and shuddered as the infected soldiers clawed at the sides of the tent, fighting to get inside. "Come on," Butch said, heading toward the tent flap on the far side. "Wait," Val called, her fingers scrabbling around the edge of a crate. "They're getting in," Butch said. Bloody arms were reaching under the edges of the tent. "Trust me," Val said. "We need to get this open." Val was looking around for something to open the crate when Alex raised her boot and stomped down on the corner of the crate as hard as she could. The wood groaned and split. Alex continued to kick the crate until it was split open, spilling its contents across the floor. Bumpy metal ovoids like olive drab Easter eggs. Grenades. Val grabbed as many as she could hold and dodged away as the soldier started worming under the edge of the tent, reaching for her. "Go!" They pushed open the tent flap and ducked outside. Val turned, pulled the pin on a grenade, and tossed it back into the tent. They'd run about 10 feet when a series of massive explosions threw them sprawling on the sand. Alex felt the pressure of the blast pressing in on her eyes and eardrums as she flung her arms over her head. Butch gripped Alex's arm and hauled her to her feet. He was saying something, but her ears were ringing too loud to hear. Behind her, infected soldiers were on fire, wheeling around with arms flailing and crawling along the sand. Val turned and started running down the beach away from the fire in madness. Alex looked at Butch. He took her hand, and they ran. Chapter 19. Butch and Alex huddled close against a tree while Val peered through the creepers down to the beach. No action. Again, Butch was struck by how tranquil this place was. A mysterious tropical paradise, except for the hordes of psychotic undead killers, of course. And how about their pal in the hockey mask? They hadn't seen him for a while, but he must be around somewhere. Butch wondered if there were any uninfected contestants left. Since they had slowed down, all the pain in his battered body was starting to speak up louder than ever. The adrenaline was draining away, and Butch felt nauseous and shaky. Alex was having a hard time, too, leaning heavily against the tree and appearing if she would collapse from heat stroke. It made him crazy that he couldn't do anything to help her, even though he knew she wouldn't want his help anyway. In all his years of keeping women at a distance, this green-eyed girl had snuck in effortlessly, without even trying. He could no longer deny that she had got under his skin, and the old familiar terror of losing her was worse than the fear of his own death. It was the last thing he needed on his mind, but it seemed he had no say in the matter. "So," Val said, "now what, guys?" Butch shook his head. "I don't know." "We can't leave the island with these things on," Alex said, her hands following the shape of the camera rig. "Well, we can't run forever either," Butch said. "Give me that," Val said, taking the rifle from Alex and removing the magazine. "Great, only 2 bullets. That means if it comes down to that, one of us is going to have to go out the hard way." "You mean suicide?" Alex said. I thought you didn't want to give up." Val shrugged. "I won't be one of those things. I'll eat one of these fucking grenades first." "Okay, look," Butch said. "What do we have in the way of weapons?" "1 machete," Val said, hefting the bloodstained blade. "1 rifle with 2 rounds, that cable if you want to count that, and 4 grenades." "That is pretty grim," Butch said. "I mean, say we take out 3 or even 4 of those creeps with each grenade. That still leaves us way too fucking many of them, and we don't even know how many more are coming up out of the goddamn water." "We can get more weapons," Val said. "The infected soldiers have them, but don't seem to remember how to use them." "But how long can we keep this up?" Alex asked. "Fighting and running like this? This is a goddamn island. There's nowhere to run. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to get really hungry." "She's right," Butch said. "We need food to keep our strength up." "Yeah," Val said. "Lunch break." She squatted down and turned over a large, rotten chunk of wood. Underneath the wood was dotted with neat chambers. Each one contained a large white grub with a fat body and an ugly black head. Butch watched with horror and disbelief as Val knocked the grubs out of their holes with a stick and popped them into her mouth like cocktail weenies. "I am not going to eat those horrible worms," Alex said, looking more than a little green. "That's right. You won't," Val said, popping another one into her mouth. "You gotta find your own." Butch pressed his lips together and swallowed hard. "We need to eat, Alex." "Don't like it?" Val said, shrugging. "Go to Taco Bell." She turned over another log. "Here," Val said, poking around underneath. "Try some of these ant eggs." She picked one up of the pale ovoids. Just like caviar." Butch pushed down on the sticks with a queasy feeling in his throat. Bigger than you'd think a tiny ant could make. He picked up one of the eggs, closed his eyes, and put it in his mouth, intending to swallow it like a fat pill. The egg popped in his mouth, and he was totally surprised by the taste. It really wasn't that bad at all. Warm and creamy, kind of nutty tasting, with a slightly bitter aftertaste, like biting into green wood. "Not bad," Butch said, reaching for another. "I am not eating any bugs," Alex said. "Bug eggs," Val replied. "Bug eggs, whatever." Alex crossed her large arms over her chest. "Forget it." "Come on," Val said. "Don't be such a pussy. I bet you used to drink those gross protein shakes all the time, didn't you? You ground up pig placenta and purified bovine colostrums and all that junk. These ant eggs aren't half as nasty as those shakes." Alex turned away silent. "Look," Val gestured to a nearby tree. "Those are cacao pods. You know, chocolate. But don't eat the green ones or you'll get the runs." Alex fell ravenously on the pointy oval fruits, smashing them open and scooping out the pulp and seeds. "She's going to have a stomachache later," Val said to Butch, slipping another ant egg into her mouth. "But I won't say I told you so." A sound echoed down the beach, a deep, resonant boom. Val turned, eyes wide. "Shotgun." Alex dropped the pod she was eating and crouched down beside them. "Shotgun? That must mean someone is still alive." I didn't see any shotties back at the military encampment, Val said. Must be newcomers. Maybe game officials? Butch remembered the frogmen he and Alex had seen creeping out of the surf the night before. Whoever it is, we need to find them, Alex said. Maybe they can help us. Sure, Val said, just like those soldiers helped us. We ought to check it out, Butch said. Come on. Butch headed down along the edge of the jungle toward the sound. Alex followed close behind, and Val made a loud, exasperated noise and then brought up the rear. When they rounded the curve of the island, their cameras fizzed out to static again. They saw a group of divers battling it out with a mixed gang of infected people, including one of the biohazard-suited friends from the night before, and the heavy black woman from the show. The divers all wore gloves, goggles, and respirators to shield them from infection. They had a ton of equipment and seemed to know exactly what they were doing. They had already lost one of their number, his corpse laying headless at the tide line. Another went down as Butch watched, torn and bitten and fought over. The central diver, the one who seemed to be the leader, turned, kicked back the infected men, and chopped off the stricken diver's head in a single fluid movement. Damn, Butch said softly. Who the hell is this? They aren't infected, that's for sure, Val said. Should we say something? Alex asked. No, Val said. We have no idea who they are. A soldier crept out of the foliage behind them, one leg missing at the hip. It was more of a nuisance than a menace. Great, Val said, swinging the machete. There's more! The soldier's head rolled away from the twitching body, and two more of his pals appeared, battling toward them throughout the tangled underbrush. Shit, Butch said. Fuck it, Alex said, slipping through the trees and down onto the beach. God damn it, Val cried, turning to follow Alex. Hey, Alex called. Hey there! Two gun barrels swung their way while the other two remaining divers held back the infected attackers. We're not infected, Alex said, waving her hands. We're not infected. The divers lowered their guns and waved Alex over. Believing to be more secure with the divers than by themselves in the jungle, Butch and Val followed Alex. Contestants? The leader of the group asked. Although Butch was close enough to see the curves beneath the neoprene of the skin-tight dive suit, he was still surprised by the feminine voice. The leader was a woman. Butch could see that she was black from the tiny stripe of exposed brown cheek beneath her mirrored goggles and her respirator, but he could not make out any other details of her appearance. Yeah, Butch said. I think we're the last ones left alive. Right, the woman said. Have you seen Jason Voorhees? Who? Guy in a hockey mask, the woman said. Tall, dark, ugly. He attacked us last night, Alex said, but we haven't seen him since. Right, the woman said again. She turned back toward the tree line. More infected soldiers were pouring out of the jungle, tearing toward them. Use the shotguns, Val said. What are you waiting for? We don't want to attract any more attention, the woman said. One time was enough, and look where it got us. I told my guys to try and keep it quiet. I don't want the military to know we're here. Val gave a harsh laugh. Honey, she said, gesturing to the crowd of infected soldiers, this is the fucking military. There's nobody normal left on this damn island. Oh, shit, one of the other divers said. What is it, Fisher? The woman asked. It's... The diver paused. I think it's Banner. He gestured with the shotgun barrel at a dripping wet, infected man, with bright red stubble on his torn-up head. Well, the woman said, I suggest you skip the tearful reunion and blow his fucking head off. Yes, ma'am, the diver said, racking the shotgun. Just as the guy was about to fire, one of the infected soldiers made a grab for the barrel of the gun. As the diver pulled the trigger reflexively, the blast blew apart one of the other diver's legs, obliterating it below the knee. The man screamed and crumpled to the ground. Fuck! The diver with the shotgun said. Kern, man, fuck! All right, boys, the woman said. We're taking it in the ass here. We need to locate our target and get the hell out of this nightmare. She chopped first the arm and then the head off the infected soldier and kicked the body away, looking down at the large watch-like device on her wrist. Good news and bad news, the woman said. Bad news first. The two remaining divers had a kind of team effort going. The one on the left took out the knees of the onrushing infected soldiers, and his buddy would reload the shotgun and blow off their heads when they crawled into range. "Okay, bad news," the woman said. "Ladies and gentlemen, Jason has left the building. The tracking device installed by the first team has him under halfway to the mainland." "What's the good news?" Butch asked. "The good news," the woman replied, "is that we are fucking out of here." "Thank God," Alex said. "Where's your boat?" The woman turned her expressionless, goggled face toward Alex. "About 500 yards out past the military ships," the woman said. "You three gear up. Hope you brought your paddy cards." Our what?" Alex asked, frowning. "Great," the woman said. "Can you at least swim?" Alex nodded. "Sure, but—" "Okay, find suits that fit you first, then we'll get you BCDs." "We're going to swim?" Butch asked. "We're going to dive," the woman replied. "But there are more of those infected freaks in the water," Butch said, shuddering at the idea of being attacked underwater. "There are infected freaks everywhere," the woman said. "They'll be on the mainland too pretty soon if you don't get suits and shut up." "But what about our camera rigs?" Alex asked. "They'll blow our heads off if we leave the island." "Not if you stay close to me," the woman said. "I have the scrambler here on my belt. It blocks the signal from the cameras within a 50-foot radius." "Oh boy," Val said. Alex turned to the pile of dive equipment by the shoreline. There were masks and long fins and belts with little square metal blocks, but no suits. I don't see any suits," Alex said. The woman tilted her head toward the fallen divers. "They won't be needing theirs." Alex's eyes went wide. "What?" "Are you squeamish?" The woman kicked back another headless zombie. "You can stay here if you prefer." "No," Alex said, a queasy expression on her face, like when Val had offered her the ant-eggs. "Here," Butch said. "Let me help you." While they were talking, Val had tossed one of her grenades out at the oncoming hordes. As the grenade exploded, Val dragged one of the dead divers into the water and stripped the wetsuit off. She then strapped on a vest with the tank attached and slipped flippers onto her feet. She waited like an impatient wife while he and Alex wrestled the wet, sticky suits off the two biggest dead men. The biggest suit barely fit over Alex's bulging thighs, but it was too low in the crotch, loose on her waist, and too long in the arms and legs. Beggars that they were, they had no choice. Butch's, on the other hand, was almost a perfect fit. "Okay." The woman removed her goggles and respirator. Butch was amazed to discover that she was quite beautiful, with high, sculpted cheekbones and a slightly Asian shape to her dark eyes. "Everyone take a dive suit. We have no time for Scuba 101, so we snorkel out until we lose the freak show and go from there. It's better that way anyway. We're going to need every drop of air we've got to make it back to the boat." She handed Butch and Alex two of the weird high-tech vests that had big tanks attached to the back and all sorts of hoses and things hanging off of them. Alex could barely close hers over her breasts. The woman squinted at them, weighing the belts of metal squares in one hand. She handed a belt to each of them. They each had a mask with a clear plastic snorkel attached and a pair of fins, and that was all they had time for before the infected men started piling up on the beach, coming close to overwhelming the other two divers. Val tossed two more grenades in quick succession, driving the infected back. "Go!" the woman said, pulling her own mask down over her eyes and nose. "Stay together, keep your face in the water and your eyes peeled for infected freaks. We'll be right behind you." Alex looked at Butch. Her pale green eyes were wide beneath the mask. Butch was scared too. "Let's go," he said, hoping he sounded tougher than he felt. Chapter 20. Lindy Bloom paddled her board cautiously out into the smooth little barrels of Playa Uvita, struggling to keep her head up and her back slightly arched, as she had been taught. She was lean and deeply tanned, with coppery sun-bleached highlights in her dark brown hair, and a wash of charcoal freckles across her sunburnt nose. Clad in a sleek black rash guard and red and white hibiscus-patterned bikini bottoms, she knew that Drew and Rico were totally checking out her butt. She sucked in a deep breath and sprang to her feet, settling into her comfortable, goofy foot stance and gripping the waxy rough surface of the board with her strong toes as she dropped in for an easy ride. She had turned 16, and as a present for her birthday, her father had surprised her with this trip to Costa Rica. Imagining being stuck sulking under mosquito netting while her dad did boring geeky stuff like bird watching, she had been less than enthusiastic about the trip at first. That is, until he also revealed the gift certificate for a 5-day course at the Green Iguana Surf School in Dominical. Her dad had laughed at first as his daughter became increasingly obsessed with surfing. Her skateboarding he could deal with. It was dangerous, and the skater boys she hung out with were tattooed and raucous lots. But it was more urban somehow. More New York. Her father, a lawyer and hardcore urbanite, had been born and raised in New York City. Why, he often wondered aloud, would a nice Jewish girl from Brooklyn be interested in something so blonde? But to Lindy, it was an inexplicable driving fixation that started with a trip to Maui the year before, and was cemented by the film Blue Crush, which she owned on DVD and watched nearly every day. The sight, smell, and feel of the Pacific Ocean had moved her like nothing in her previous 15 years ever had. It was as if her life in the still and cement canyons of New York City was some dull, distant dream, and Lindy only came alive with the salt wind in her hair and the sand between her toes. She plastered the walls of her room with posters of the female surfers she idolized: Marge Calhoun, Eve Fletcher Rips, Kayla Kennelly, and Lane Beachley. She filled her iPod with surf sounds from Dick Dale and Link Ray, the Aquabats and Lost Straitjackets. As she threw cocky lip slides and dropped back into the 8-foot bowl at the Millennium Skate Park out in Bay Ridge, she'd closed her eyes, and for a split second she would picture herself dropping into a flawless turquoise pipe and riding that blue beast right off into the sunset. It was as if skating had been nothing but a gateway drug, a warm-up act. Riding concrete was tough, but predictable. That lip was going to be exactly the same every time she hit it. The ocean was alive, in flux, moving and changing with every heartbeat. It had rhythms, but it could turn on you with no warning. You could break your neck on the concrete too, but somehow the danger of the ocean seemed almost sexy, like a lover who liked to get rough but always left you wanting more. Lindy had attempted sexual encounters exactly 3 times in her young life. Lame, sticky fumblings with overeager skater boys who all seemed to blow it right when she was starting to enjoy herself. None of them made her feel anything even close to the way she felt about the ocean. It was almost spiritual in its crush-like intensity. She felt as if she had been waiting her whole life for the moment. She was doing it. She was really surfing, like in her dreams. Sure, maybe it was baby waves, but soon she'd be hitting the big ones right alongside the more advanced students like Rico and that cute Aussie Drew. Her mind was awash with hazy golden fantasies of moving to Maui after graduation. Drew putting sunscreen on her and catching a big one as she paddled back out again. Lindy watched a nice incoming set of 3 coiling toward her with mathematical precision, when out of nowhere something slammed into her board like a Mack truck, knocking her awkwardly sideways and into the face of an incoming wave. Tossed and twisted beneath the water, Lindy was struggling to orient herself when she felt a powerful tug on her leash, dragging her by the ankles swiftly away from the shore. Something had a hold of her board and was taking her off like a jet ski. Her face broke the surface as she fought to disconnect her ankle cuff, sky and ocean trading places over and over. Then, without warning, a large chunk of her board popped up out of the water with the leash still attached, smacking her in the face. She sputtered and coughed, clutching the pizza box-sized fragment to her chest. She could see Drew, Rico, and her instructor Jamie screaming and waving their arms hysterically on the beach, but she could not hear them. She then saw Jamie point out to her left and made the universal hand sign that struck instant terror into the heart of any surfer or diver. A single hand turned sideways and held up to the forehead. Shark. The fear that gripped her was so total, so primal, that she was literally paralyzed, frozen with her knees tucked up into her chest as if she could make all of her body beneath the surface of the water disappear. She couldn't see anything. Where was it? Maybe they're wrong, she thought. Then she saw it, 11 feet long, though it looked like 50. The snub-nosed and stocky bull shark was heading right for her. The water was so clear she could see its cold, tiny eyes. It didn't even look real. She wanted more than anything to haul ass, to get away. but she couldn't seem to make her muscles obey her. In the extremity of her terror, she felt warm urine leak from her body into the salt water around her. Can it smell me, she wondered? Maybe if I remain still. She squeezed her eyes shut and waited to die. What happened was so unbelievable that she could not wrap her mind around what she was seeing. Just as the shark had circled around for a second pass, a man burst up out of the water beside it, gripping it by the fin and sinking a huge knife into its muscular gray back. What the hell kind of scuba gear is that, Lindy wondered. She frowned at her savior's white face mask. It looked like a hockey mask, and that wasn't a wetsuit. They were raggedy, regular clothes, dull dark pants, and a rough work shirt, like a janitor might wear. But despite his oddball taste in beachwear, the guy was locked in a furious battle with the enormous bull shark. It had clamped its jaw around one arm and shook it furiously, but it didn't stop the guy from hacking into the shark, splitting open its snout and slashing it at its gills. They rolled over and over together, plunging the masked man into the water again and again. He jammed the knife into the shark's pale underbelly, and the surf turned red with blood and warm gore, splashing Lindy's face. Soft loops of floating intestine brushed against her, and she felt sure she was going to puke or pass out. But she still could not seem to make herself move. All she could do was watch horrified as the masked man gripped the shark's lower jaw, seemingly unmindful of the razor-sharp teeth that dug into his palm, and ripped the entire jaw free from the shark's head. Mortally wounded, the shark sank, twitching to the sandy bottom. The man turned to Lindy, and she could see that during the furious battle, they had floated close enough to the shore for him to stand with his head and shoulders above the water. He looked at her with his masked face cocked slightly to one side, and the bloody shark jaw clenched in his hands. Gory tatters of flesh hung from the jaw as he held it out to her, like some kind of weird offering. "You," she whispered, her voice all but gone. "You saved my life." Suddenly her paralysis broke, and she threw grateful arms around her savior. He smelled pretty rank, but she guessed that was probably all the shark guts and gore that were splattered all over him. He looked at her quizzically, like he had never been hugged before and wasn't entirely sure what she was doing. She saw Drew and Jamie charging into the waves, running out to meet her. "I'm okay," she called, waving with one arm still slung around her savior's neck. "I'm all right." That's when her savior brought the bloody shark jaw down on her like a guillotine. She felt the triangular razor-sharp teeth slice into the flesh of her face, and, more horribly, into the delicate jelly of her left eye. White-hot pain erased all conscious thought, and she sucked in a breath to scream when the masked man jammed his machete into the soft spot beneath her sternum. Her body went into violent convulsions, and she was consumed by bottomless rage and fury as Drew and Jamie reached her. "Oh my God, Lindy!" Drew said. He might have said more, but she was on him like a shark, biting deep into his left cheekbone before he could finish his sentence. In less than a minute, Jamie was also infected. A small crowd of curious ticos and gawking tourists had gathered around the shoreline, eager to find out what all the excitement was about. They did find out, and it was not pretty. Okay, this has been chapters 18, 19, and 20 of Friday the 13th, The Jason Strain. You can't really top Jaws versus Jason. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. I don't know what else I can say to add to that. Everybody, I'll be back tomorrow with some more of Friday the 13th, The Jason Strain. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and have a great night.